Okay, just before we get started, I got a request to play the song one more time for those of you who may have missed it.
If you want your parents proud, start saving your dollars
Feel free to,
now.
if you want to get up and move.
Quarters, nickels, dimes, and pennies, better save them if you want 20. Don't lend it. Want to be rich one day, the less you spend, the more you save. Just save it. Want to make your parents proud? Wasting dough is not allowed. Understand, as you save, the road to riches will be paved. Pennies saved, dollars earned, simple money lessons learned. Earning money, saving smart, be ahead with an early start.
Some kids need it more than you. It's great to give away some too. Money does not grow on trees. It is a necessity.
Holiday and birthday cash will help you start saving fast.
Just save it. Quarters, nickels, dimes, and pennies. Better save them if you want 20s.
Soon you will be on your way, be a winner, save today. As you listen to our song, we want you to sing along.
Just save it.
Okay, anyone want to sing along out there? No? That obviously was for children, and although someone in the audience did say it might work well for his students, I don't know about that. Plenty of seats up front. Okay, I think we're going to get started. Greetings, my fellow FLAs, as I think I called you all last year if you were here. Financial literacy advocates, maybe you call, or you can call your financial literacy ambassador, I've heard the term, financial literacy advisor, but they all point back to why financial literacy matters. I think we've heard the term from time to time about financial wellness, right? But that's kind of awkward, FWAs, right? So I'm going to call you FLAs and get started. So that's me, Elizabeth Coogan. I am a senior advisor is my technical title, but I am really the chief FLA at FSA. Try to keep the spotlight on financial literacy. And I'm really gratified. I know this morning at the general session, General Brown spoke at the general session and mentioned financial literacy and the importance of it in the session. It was also just mentioned in the federal update. And also there's been some legislation that was introduced last year, and I spoke about that. But following the introduction of that legislation, publication is out and available. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but really gratifying to see that as well. So I'm not going to do all the talking up here. I'm lucky to have some fellow FLAs with me. And so we'll hear from Erin, Nick, and Karen, and they'll introduce one another and tell you a little bit about themselves and the work that they're doing. So the session today, Financial Literacy Matters, we're going to hear from the panel of experts who are all from the great state of Texas. So really excited. Texas, good, so a couple of you out there. And is the second state after Louisiana that requires seniors to complete a FAFSA, but that's not the only reason that they're up here. They have a lot of great things to share, and they all share in the common goal that I know you all share in, which is student and financial success for our students. So this is the roster of who we'll be hearing from, and so since it's the FSA conference, I'll be kicking us off and starting for FSA. And I'm really gratified to have these esteemed panelists here from the great state of Texas. I think that they demonstrate the power of collaboration. I was reading some of the, getting to know more about their programs, and from the Texas Higher Ed Board, I found a publication promoting a coordinated approach to financial literacy. And a couple of quotes, Erin, if you don't mind. When people plan wisely and don't make mistakes with their money, many things are accomplished. Better understanding of how and when to pay for post-secondary education increases the likelihood of degree completion, career fulfillment, and manageable debt. So I thought that was really well said and wanted to share that. So I just love Wordles. I thought this was kind of a fun way to start with some color. So this really represents a lot of the external data and surveys that are studying and talking about our students, okay? It's really, you can't open the newspaper without hearing something about the cost of college and college debt and so forth. So we're all in really powerful positions, and you're in an even more powerful position, I think, because you can directly influence your students. I think there's a lot that these individuals who work with their students can share with you, and I hope that some of the surveys that you're seeing are informing you in your work. I selected the trellis. That was the little on the bottom right of the Wordle trellis. They did a survey on student financial wellness, and something that really stuck out at me was, of course, 58% have more student loan debt than they expected, whether they borrowed more or capitalized interest. But the fact that students are so surprised is really mind-boggling, but it's something that we're all dealing with. But 68% said that they would use financial support services if offered by their school. So I think probably a fair amount of you are saying, yes, we have these services, but they're not coming, okay? So how do we get students to show up and take advantage of some of the services, or how do we get the commitment from our administration to allow us to provide the services that students so desperately need? Department of Education does a survey of students who are receiving financial aid, the National Post-Secondary Student Aid Survey study, and back in 2016, they felt that financial literacy was important enough to add to that survey of questions. So unfortunately, only 28% of students are getting all three of these questions right. But the good news is that students who had loans did perform better than those students who did not. So I pulled out some of these verbatim comments. Federal Student Aid does surveys. We survey our borrowers in grace, we survey borrowers in repayment, borrowers in school, and I'm sure that each and every one of you can say, yes, I've heard that, and at least one of these before. Rethinking how to spend my loan, borrow less, not accept my refund check and make my loan smaller. So I think that we all have an obligation to try and help to at least minimize the regrets that students are facing as a result of making poor decisions about paying for college. So I mentioned earlier about legislation. And part of that legislation said that a report should come out to help institutes of higher education. By show of hands, people familiar with it out there? A good amount, maybe. So they are in the resource room with this report. We're going to talk a little bit about it today. I think the Treasury FLEC representatives would love to hear from you and would love to see you stop by and talk to them. This report was shared. I know a few of you out in the audience actually were there with me. I was lucky enough to be invited. It was at the White House. And they highlighted schools that are providing quality financial education. It was attended by the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Treasury, the Treasurer, Jovita Carranza, the one that signs the dollars, and there was also someone there who was from the Council of Economic Advisors, which I was like, wow, this is big, okay, because the decisions that students are making and borrowing for college has great impact on our economy as a whole. And so the Council of Economic Advisors is taking a quick look, a deep look at what's going on here. So I was thrilled. It was at the Indian Treaty Room in the White House. So it was a nice venue, but I did tell someone after, I said, I have to admit, last time I was here, I was at bowling in the White House, which was, I thought, really cool. And I don't know how many of you know that there's a bowling alley. It was given as a gift to President Harry S. Truman, but he didn't have much use for it. So then it got redone by Richard and Pat Nixon, who were avid bowlers. They were I don't know how much time they spent, but they spent a lot of time bowling. And then recently it was refurbished by the current administration, and they have shoes and balls and whatnot, and the First Lady had sort of a meet and greet and wanted some of the children of the Secret Service to bowl, and there happened to be a picture, and I thought, there's probably no one in the world like the First Lady who can look good in bowling shoes, right? You know, but she was so, the bowling alley is getting a lot of use, and so the Indian Treaty Room was a treat as well. So the report talks about best practices for delivery of financial literacy, and it really makes reference to what Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has been spending a lot of time and effort in doing. There's a publication on their site, but this publication, this is the hard copy, and it is available in the resource room. There's reference to it in the brochure when you came in if you want to take a look at that and carry something smaller home. But talks about knowing the individuals and families to be served. So in your case, a lot of you are in a great position because you know the individuals and you are very much a trusted source for those individuals who come to you for information. Providing actionable, relevant, and timely information, like providing the information before the decision needs to be made. So FSA is working really hard at trying to customize communication and have more characteristics of our borrowers as we communicate out to them, and we need your help as well. FLEC added 3 more best practices about developing standards, provide ongoing support, and evaluate for impact. So we have a lot of work still to do going forward, and we want to hear from schools as it relates to some of these best practices and some great things that you might be doing that would be worthwhile sharing with others. The recommendations for delivery, again, the reference to customizing and targeting. When I look at this slide, though, I think, there's looks like a couple of offices on campus. I sort of see enrollment, I see maybe institutional research, I see careers. So I think a lot of the delivery counts on collaboration, and hopefully you all experience that, and you'll hear some great examples of that from the panelists. This one talks about engaging students, and the one that's in the middle on the top is one of my favorite, and it's to deploy well-trained peer educators. We'll hear a little bit more from the panelists on that as well, but there's some great information and some great support for peer-to-peer counseling as it relates to helping students, having students help other students managing their money and making, we're not talking about investment decisions, but talking like basic things like budgeting and understanding their student loans. Emergency assistance, a lot of schools have started with emergency aid, and so, you know, we talk about financial literacy, that students don't know enough about how to do this and that. There are many students who are in the position that they just don't have enough, so emergency assistance has been proved to be very, very beneficial for bringing many students over the finish line. So the publication that I referenced really focuses on best practices, but it focuses on 2 particular communications. One is the financial aid offer, and I heard that was mentioned in the federal update as well. So they make certainly reference to providing the cost of attendance. There were some studies out there that there are a lot of schools that are providing an aid offer without actually showing the cost of attendance. We put out an electronic announcement during National Financial Capability Month, which is in April of this year, and it was about things to avoid In your financial aid offer letter, we're trying to get schools to move away from the word award. We were really pleased to see that publication received NASPA kudos, and it was one of the top 10 popular original articles that their members read this year. The other communication that the publication focused on are student debt letters. So there are some schools that are getting really good results as a result of sending out borrower debt letters. Talk about timely and actionable. I had a conversation with someone, just certain, depending on what your student population looks like, but if you have a traditional one, sort of that they live at school and go home for the holidays, Thanksgiving might be a time to send home a student debt letter to the student to their home address. Probably most parents would say, gee, I saw you got something in the mail from your university. What was that about? And it might be a good topic of conversation at the dinner table, or perhaps not. I'm happy to hand over and hear from the state of Texas. I did tell them when we were sort of prepping for the presentation that last year I started off with some random facts, which were kind of fun. I think I talked about flamingos and I think the cost of Thanksgiving dinner, so then I got them all worried that I was going to do, what are you going to do? I think I should do a random fact for the state of Texas. So the best one that I came up with was that Dr. Pepper, the oldest soft drink in America, was invented in Waco, Texas. If you didn't know that fun fact, in 1885. It's the oldest major soft drink in the U.S. So, did you all know that? Okay, that was a good one. So these are my fellow FLAs. You'll hear about their flax and their TACPEPs and all sorts of really great stuff as it relates to why financial literacy matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was a good fun fact. We were wondering. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Willig, and I'm excited to be here today representing the great state of Texas and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. I heard a few hoops when we mentioned Texas earlier, so I'm just curious if by show of hands, how many Texans are in the room? There's always a few of us everywhere. I am not a native Texan, but I got there as quickly as I could, as I say. So to give a bit of context about the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and who we are, in 1965, the Coordinating Board was created by the legislature in order to be the highest authority on the state in matters of public higher education. Our role is really to provide a statewide perspective, to encourage coordination and the efficient use of resources. We also collect and make accessible a good amount of data so that our institutions and policymakers can make data-informed decisions. And we administer funds for financial aid and a number of other grants and programs to support our higher education goals. I work in the Division for College Readiness and Success, where our focus is on, as you might have guessed, on access and success. Our goal is to ensure that Texas has an accessible and equitable higher education system where all students are supported to complete a credential of value. And we really do see financial wellness and financial education as a key piece of that equation. So to provide even more context, since 2015, Texas has been working under a coordinated state higher education plan called 60 by 30 Tex. And as the name might suggest, the focus of that plan is to ensure that more Texans, our goal is 60% of those between ages 25 and 34, have a post-secondary credential by 2030. And as you can see here, this is one of our sub-goals around student debt. And this goal is a maintenance goal. So we'd like to see debt stay at current levels around 60% of first-year wages. And you might be asking, why a maintenance goal? Why aren't we trying to reduce student debt? And there's a reason for that. So we have more and more students coming in who are from low-income backgrounds, and we know that students must be able to borrow sufficiently to be able to complete their degree and get that return on investment that we know that they can see with a college degree. But we want to make sure that that debt that they take on isn't more than their future earnings can support. So given the rising cost of college and the cost of living, we believe that holding debt levels flat relative to first-year wages would actually be a pretty significant accomplishment. I do want to note that since I made this slide, we have some 2018 data. Just a little update that we have a decrease in the number of excess semester credit hours to 16, and that's one of the things that can contribute to student debt going kind of over where we would like to see it go. So that's an additional data point that we're collecting, as well as we're also watching the percent of undergraduates that complete with debt, and we had a slight improvement of 1.4 percentage points on those completing with debt. That first goal stayed pretty steady right at 59%, so it's right where we would like to see it be. So coming out of the development of this 60 by 30 Texas plan in 2015, the Financial Literacy Advisory Committee, or FLAC for short, was convened to determine ways to focus on this goal that we have in our plan and to think about how we can better advise students and parents on financial aid options and the impact of those options on their future, both during college and after college. Karen Cerna, who you'll hear from momentarily, was a part of that group. So the committee focused on promoting a better understanding of how and why to pay for training and education after high school, and they released a report in 2017 with a number of recommendations, which you'll see the kind of gist of those here. The focus really, you can see, was on training, particularly training for people providing financial education to our students, making sure that the information that they're providing is accurate and presented in an appropriate way. Also on communication and statewide partnerships, which is a big part of how and why we're here, and some of the things that we'll be continuing to talk about. Like Elizabeth mentioned, that coordinated effort, and we really believe it's important to have this effort coming from multiple sources and multiple levels of leadership. So while we've had to, in order to work from this strategy and these suggestions, we've had to make some adjustments and haven't been able to implement exactly as the FLAC recommended. We've really taken to heart the core of what they recommended. So following the release of this report, my division, the Division for College Readiness and Success, was handed this work. It moved out of our student financial aid services and into my division, which to some people seemed like maybe not an appropriate move, since our focus has traditionally been on access and success. But we see it as a really natural fit, and it was a really intentional choice on behalf of the coordinating board to recognize that this conversation can't stop at financial aid and financial aid literacy. It's really about financial wellness more broadly. And so that choice to move it into our division, where we're really looking at the whole student and their whole journey from access all the way through completion, we think that that's a really good fit for us, even though it has meant that we're doing a lot of learning on this topic, because it is not where we were experts previously. So we took the recommendations from the FLAC and have kind of broken this into two directions. So on one side of the house in our division, we have a focus on access. So my colleagues on the access side are focusing on effectively communicating and disseminating financial literacy and financial aid literacy information to students and counselors. And they've done this primarily by incorporating financial literacy information and education into the programs that we already have. So Generation Texas is one of our college-going culture campaigns that happens throughout the year. We do a lot of work with high school counselors around college signing days, FAFSA completion, those kinds of things, kind of your traditional access work. And we're working to weave in more messages about financial wellness and financial literacy into those activities. One of the things that we've done that we've been excited about, has been kind of fun and different for us, has been our engagement on social media. So Generation Texas has always had a big social media component, and we've done a number of Twitter chats recently specifically on financial literacy. And that's been an interesting way both for us to engage with our audience and kind of provide some information, but also to hear from them. What are the common questions that you're getting from students? What are the counselors struggling to answer? And it's helping inform our efforts going forward. One of the other things that we've done is work with our Advise Texas program. So if you're familiar with the College Advising Corps, this is our offshoot of that model, our Texas version of that model, where we have near-peer advisors working with students trying to get into college. And we are increasing the amount of training that they are receiving on these topics. So they've always received a pretty robust training that included financial aid information, but we're trying to expand, again, beyond that, just that conversation about financial aid, to really looking at financial wellness and the bigger picture with students. Not trying to make them into experts or financial counselors, but to make sure that they have enough context to be able to really support and advise the students that they're working with. We are also working on a number of toolkits and checklists and they'll be continuing to think about how they can incorporate that work into their existing programming. On my side of the house, I kind of work in our division. I'm kind of the in-between person between the Access and the Success folks. So I do a little bit of work with both, but my focus has been working directly with institutions of higher education and thinking about how, as institutions, we can have an impact on our students in financial wellness. And we also really want to understand what's happening on the campuses already. We did not have any kind of coordinated way of gathering that information, and I'll talk in a minute about how we are gathering that information now. But we really wanted to better understand the picture of what's happening and figure out what is an appropriate role for the state and how can we really be supportive in that role that we play as a coordinator and collaborator across the state. So we're excited to collaborate with Trellis on the project that has ultimately come out, the Financial Wellness Learning Collaborative. We work with Brian Ashton from Trellis on this, and he really brings a lot of leadership on this issue in both Texas and nationally, so they've been a great partner on this. So the Financial Wellness Learning Collaborative, which I'm really excited to share a little bit about with you, is different than a traditional committee or group that the state might form. We have a million committees, as I'm sure your states do as well. But we've tried to make this a little different in a couple of different ways. So one, it's a short-term project, so it's just 1 year, but the format is also pretty different. We're bringing together folks from across the state in many different roles, many institution types. Nick is one of our members, and you'll hear more from him in a moment. And the model also has an intentional focus on providing professional development opportunities for members as part of the work. So yes, we want them to produce something that is going to help guide what we do next, but we also want to provide an opportunity for those members to learn and also to start forming a network, because again, we really believe that the collaboration between all of these professionals doing this work across the state is critical. In addition, the model really implores us to learn from people with diverse perspectives. So when we asked for nominations, we of course received a lot of nominations from directors of financial aid or people working in the financial aid office. And that's great, and we were glad to hear that they're excited about this work, but we also wanted to make sure we had some representation from folks who are working directly with students and folks who might be in kind of the less usual suspects in terms of working on this on a college campus. So we have some folks from financial aid in this group, but we also have a couple of folks who work directly with students in the kind of day-to-day, in the thick of it, talking with students and working with them on their finances. We have a professor who's taken a sabbatical to really focus on this issue and other issues of student-centeredness on his campus. So we have a real diverse group, which has been great. And early in the process of working with this group, we realized that we had a lot to think about, a lot to focus on, and so we knew we were going to have to split into some working groups. So I want to spend just a minute telling you a little bit about these working groups and what they are working on. So I'm going to kind of work backwards from how they're listed here. The training design work group is one that I'm particularly excited about. We are working with a group called Texas On Course. They are out of the University of Texas at Austin, and they have an online training platform that they've used to develop trainings for K through 12 counselors already, and we're helping develop out a higher ed version of that. And it's for advisors or really anyone on an institution of higher ed who is interested in the topics that we're putting information out about. One of these modules is going to be on financial wellness. Like with our Advise Texas advisors, we're not suggesting that academic advisors become financial education experts, but we would like them to have a bit more context and information. We did do a needs assessment at the beginning of the process to learn what are the questions they don't know how to answer, what is the kind of information that they want, what is the depth of information that they would find useful. And we found that most of them said that they had received little to none to no information in their training about financial literacy. What they had received was some kind of basic knowledge about financial aid, and then they've been told to just refer everyone to financial aid if they bring up finances. So that was something we'd like to be able to give them more tools in their toolkit to be able to say, you know, I'm recognizing that this student has more of a challenge around managing their budget. That's maybe not an issue that will be helpful if we send them straight to financial aid. There's a little more to it. And we also want to help them understand all the different resources that are, on their campuses. So we'll be thinking about how we can do that with this online module. It'll be free and on demand and available for anyone who's interested. And that will be released and that includes folks out of the state, so you don't have to be in Texas to use this. So when it comes out, it will be up for grabs, and that will be available in early 2021. The policy and procedure group has perhaps one of the toughest charges of our work groups. They are looking at policy and procedure from an institutional standpoint and thinking about what are the things that we do have control of as a campus or as an institution that we can change, that can have a positive impact on student financial wellness. So we know that financial aid works in a pretty regulated environment. We know there are a lot of compliance challenges, but we also know that there is perhaps more flexibility than we sometimes realize. So we're trying to help, this group is trying to think about how can we present some of the things that we've seen college campuses and colleges doing that are creative. For example, one example that Nick and I have discussed is we are aware of a campus where if a student is late paying a bill, instead of there being a fee, they have the option, at least the first time they're late, to have that fee waived if they'll come in for a financial counseling session. So that's an opportunity for intervention at the point when the student needs it, so that's timely and relevant, like the recommendations that Elizabeth was talking about, and it provides that information when the student is most likely to be able to hear it, and it gives them also an incentive. So it's those kinds of opportunities. So that group is working on gathering some more of those examples and figuring out how to package that in a way that could be useful for others to see. Maybe there is some wiggle room here in terms of our policies and procedures and things that we could do that could really make a difference for students. The student programs work group, our final work group, which Nick has been a big leader on, and so you'll see how big of a leader Nick is in many ways when he comes up in a moment. One of the things that this group wanted to do from the outset was to they wanted to know what were the student programs focused on financial literacy, what's happening on campuses. We do not, as I mentioned earlier, collect that information in any other way. So they wrote a very simple but very comprehensive survey that we sent out to all of our public institutions 2 and 4 year across the state, and we had a very good response rate. We had over 90 institutions out of about 130 respond, so we're very happy with that response rate. We're still analyzing the data, but what we saw just at a quick look of what we've seen so far, we can see that there is a lot happening. It is often not as coordinated as we might like to see. That's happening in different places all over campus, and even people on individual campuses would like to see it more coordinated, but maybe don't quite know how. So that's something that we see as an area where we could possibly focus. And we also asked about staffing and resources. So that is going to be really helpful as we look at that data to see how can the state play a role in making sure that these programs are prioritized, and that really matters in terms of how they're funded. So those are some of the things that we're hoping will come out of that report, and that will be released with the rest of these work groups reports in early 2020. So we're really looking forward to the output of this group. We think it will really help inform the state's work going forward, and I think you'll continue to see that focus on collaboration and creativity, and some of the other things that Elizabeth mentioned in the FLEC report are things that all of our groups have been discussing. So we're seeing a lot of commonality between the work that we're doing and the work that's being done at the federal level. So that's exciting to us. So with that, I'm happy to hand it over to my friend and colleague, Nick Kilmer from Texas A&M. I guess today he's representing TACFEP.
So I am representing, I'm going to step back here. I am representing TACFEP today, the Texas Association of Collegiate Financial Education Professionals. But since it was already brought up that I'm also from Texas A&M, thank you very much. I feel it necessary. I cannot begin a presentation anywhere in the nation or world without starting with howdy. So if you don't mind obliging me, I'm going to say howdy real quick, and I'd love to see like 700 of you say howdy back. Okay, 1, 2, 3, howdy. That's beautiful. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for indulging me. As mentioned, I am the president of TACFEP. That is our State Financial Educators Association for institutions of higher education. And one thing I'd like to say as the president of this group is how much I appreciate the collaboration we've had with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. As an independent individual at an institution trying to serve my students as a financial educator, knowing that I have the backing of a state agency makes all the difference in the world. But with that said, equally in line with what Aaron was saying with that survey that we just recently did as part of the Financial Wellness Learning Collaborative, one of the hardest things that I find for people who are starting a financial education program or just trying to grow or enhance theirs is figuring out what is everyone else doing. So I'm incredibly thrilled about the survey that the Coordinating Board has put out. I can't wait to see what the analysis says. But at the same time, I think that a state financial educators association serves a distinct and crucial purpose. And what I'd like to do is just tell you a little bit about our association, a little bit about some of our members, what they have accomplished, many of their accomplishments ring true with the FLEC report. So they are meeting some of those best practices. What I'll say right off the bat is that in my time in financial education over the last 4 or 5 years, I don't believe a single school has completely figured it out. I don't think that anyone has the one-size-fits-all solution to financial education, and that's because we have different student demographics, we have different organizational structures, we have different resources, we're different sizes. But what I do want to do is share that the beauty of a network like our association is that we can all be experts in certain areas and then share or steal from one another. So I'd like to tell you how basically I stole a lot of ideas from my colleagues within TACFEP. When I first started this about 4 years ago, I was given a blessing. I was running the Veteran Services Office at Texas A&M, and I was given the opportunity to open a financial education center. Alongside that, they were going to give me a full team. And that sounds amazing. I was also, though, given the freedom to do, am I too loud? Oh, thank you for that. I'm not used to this. In addition to that, though, I was given the freedom to do as I wished, so long as I made an impact. And that sounds amazing, but as time starts flying, it also feels like a heavy burden, considering I had no idea which direction to run in. And so with that said, I started researching several different, I better do that right there. There you go. Thank you very much. I started researching schools independently on my own. Needless to say, with over 100 schools in Texas, that was overwhelming. It was very labor intensive, it was frustrating, and it was inconclusive. I could not tell which schools were doing great works in financial education. And then by chance, luckily, I got connected to TACFEP because I attended their first symposium, or I attended my first symposium, which was in May of 2016. And what I learned there was that this association is made up of a bunch of driven, committed, and intelligent professionals who are very generous, and they're willing to share because we're all facing the same challenge. Like I mentioned, none of us have figured out how best to approach financial education with our students, and so at the same time we're faced with the same challenge. We're willing to share what we do well as where we've failed. And our annual symposium at TACFEP gives us that opportunity. So we have a half-day afternoon presentation, group of presentations and networking opportunities, followed by an evening night of networking, and then another half-day morning at this symposium. And in that opportunity, in that time, we're given the opportunity to connect with each other, hear what each other is up to, what our plans are for the next year. In addition to that, hear from field experts, and then take that home and apply it on our campus. I will say after my first symposium, I was blown away. And through TACFEP, I was able to take home a lot of what other campuses were already doing right, many of which I'd like to share with you now. And I went and implemented that back on my campus, and it helped me to start on the right footing. So what I hope that you take away from this, if nothing else, is that the importance of a network like this. If you don't have a financial education network in your state, I hope you find a group of people and you start one. If you need help, if you just want to pick our brains on what we're doing in Texas, we'd love to share our structure and how we operate, et cetera. If you already have an association, I hope you join one. If your state doesn't have one, though, and you'd like to join TACFEP, we are welcoming everyone across the nation. You do not have to be a Texan. 2-year, 4-year schools, in addition to that, corporations, nonprofits, individuals, anyone who seeks to try to support financial education for students in higher education. You can learn more on TACFEP.com, though. So one of the first schools that I met when I joined TACFEP was the University of North Texas. And they're located near Dallas. They've got a diverse student population, and they're fairly large. And they've had a money management center for many years. They're actually one of the founders of the association. And one of the things that blew me away when I first started this was, again, their generosity. When I first met Paul Goebel, he's a board member for TACFEP as well as the manager of the Student Money Management Center at UNT. The first thing he said to me was, "Nick, I'll give you everything I have." And sure enough, he gave me a huge operating manual of everything that he does to run his center, which you can find in the appendix attached to this PowerPoint. So he said it's free to share with all of y'all as well. But 2 areas that they really excel in is one, peer mentors, and then also program evaluation. when I first saw the work-study students, because they hire federal work-study students to work for the Student Money Management Center as financial educators, as peer mentors, I was shocked by the maturity and the training that they had gone through. And one of the beauties of a federal work-study, as you all know, working at financial scholarships and financial aid is where I work, excuse me, but financial aid. Working in financial aid is the fact that if you can't afford to invest more in full-time staff members, you could possibly hire work studies for a position like this. And again, having seen just the excellence that they provided in those positions, I went back home to Texas A&M and I copied them. And so we now have 5 federal work studies working in our Money Education Center. And I'll tell you, they take a huge burden off of my full-time staff, but they also provide an opportunity for students to relate with another student. Students don't always want to talk to a staff member. They might view our advice as condescending. At the same time, if they talk to a peer and get the exact same advice, they might be willing to do something with it, modify their financial behavior, etc. As I also mentioned, one of their other places that they excel is program evaluation. That is another FLEC best practice in an area that I at Texas A&M need to improve at. And so I will be in touch with my friend Paul, and I'll be stealing his ideas. But with that said, they've been doing program evaluation for years. And they actually have an assistant director dedicated just to program evaluation because they view it as that crucial to make sure that what they're doing is right and that it's impactful. Sam Houston State is another founder of TACFEP, and they, one of the places that I think that they excel most in is student loan advising. After the state of Texas issued Senate Bill 887, which mandated that all institutions of higher education in Texas issue a debt letter annually in 2018-2019, Sam Houston State kind of led the charge on this, and they spent 9 months in investigating, researching how best to collect that student loan data and then communicate it effectively to their students. They did student testing for their templates, but then when they were done, they didn't just keep it to themselves. They came to TACFEP, they shared it with all of our members, and for some other schools that didn't have those same large resources as Sam Houston State, that was a huge burden taken off their shoulders. In addition to that, though, this led to opening doors, this debt letter at Sam Houston, to where more faculty, more staff, and more students began engaging with their center regarding student loans. And so what Sam Houston did was they went and invested in student advisors that were specifically focused on nothing else but student loan counseling. And so I thought that was a novel idea. Texas Tech University is located in Lubbock, and it is in the Panhandle. And one of the areas that they have really excelled in is also in peer mentors, but in a different way. They took a different approach. Some of you might have heard of it, but their Red to Black program is nationally acclaimed. And essentially, rather than using federal work studies or just regular student workers paid by wages, they are volunteers. So they actually train student volunteers to come in, dozens of student volunteers to come in 1 hour a week to help teach their fellow raters about money. And that has been a highly successful program. Another area where they've excelled, and this is where, again, I'm trying to take a feather out of their cap, is in academia. Rather than just strictly focus on advising and on workshops, they took financial education to the academic realm, and they started a 3-credit-hour course, which now is a part of their core electives. So it falls under social and behavioral science, and this course enables them to reach hundreds of students a year and teach each student and engage with them for 20-plus hours a semester on money. I will tell you, in my experience, you can give them pizza, you can give them scholarships. It is impossible to get a student to sit down for 20 hours a semester and learn about money, but for academic credit, they will do it. At Texas A&M, we have a general elective course. Again, after talking to Texas Tech, they are helping me to understand how best to approach our faculty senate and get our course in the core curricula as well, so that more students can enroll and still receive their financial aid at the same time. If you want to learn more about their course, in the appendix, you'll find that they have a Life, Love, and Money 3-credit-hour course syllabus. And finally, to Texas A&M, one of the areas that I hope we've contributed in is in student loan counseling. When we first opened this center, I had a 3-year goal of finding a way to better engage with our students about their student loan debt. And then in our first year, we had the amazing opportunity to join the Department of Education's loan counseling experiment. And essentially what that allowed us to do was take a sample of our student borrowers and require that they complete annual loan counseling for the last 3 years, every year, before their subsidized or unsubsidized loans would disperse. I was a little bit nervous about how students would take that. Their impact, their response, their feedback has been amazing. I would say that online, for our online modules, which I'll get to in a minute, the feedback has been about 8 out of 10 for a requirement, which is withholding their student loans. For their in-person counseling, it's been about 9 out of 10. And what we found is they come in grumbling, and when they leave, they say, can I bring my girlfriend or my mom next time? Because they really need to learn about this. And so it's been a real blessing being a part of that loan insurance counseling, that experiment. And one of the things that we did was try to treat each classification of student a little differently. So try to engage with them with a different content in mind and with a different engagement method. And so we're talking about freshmen. We engage with them via online module, a homegrown module, lasts about 10 or 15 minutes. And it focuses mostly on finding college funding resources as well as how to budget their money, and then just reemphasizing the importance of timely graduation. For our sophomores, they also do an online module, but it focuses on helping them to build, through a worksheet, a college funding plan. And then for our juniors, as they're nearing repayment, we think it's important to have that engagement get a little bit more personal, so they come in for an in-person presentation where they will engage with us and we will talk to them about the basics of student loan repayment. So such as repayment terms, delinquency, default, things like that. And then finally, as seniors, we want to see them face to face. And so they will come in and we'll actually help them analyze their ability to afford the standard repayment plan, assuming a certain gross and net income amount based upon their assumptions. And if it looks like they could struggle with that, we evaluate other student loan options, repayment plans that might be better suited than the standard repayment plan. But with that said, I hope that what we've given back is a little bit through our contributions to NASFA's recent report on the enhancing loan counseling. Recently, NASFA published a report on enhancing loan counseling, which would basically suggest, make recommendations to the effect of if Congress were to ever mandate annual loan counseling, what would be the best way to do this to both be impactful to the student, but not be horribly burdensome on the institution. Now, I hope that I was able to give you a little bit of depth on some of the members of TAC-FEP, but with that said, I'd like to hand it off to Karen Cerna, another member of TAC-FEP, so she can give you a much more in-depth view of what her Student Money Management Center offers and how they approach financial education in Texas.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Cerna, and I'm the director of the Student Money Management Office at Austin Community College. Prior to working at Austin Community College, I spent 13 years working at a community-based organization, working on programming for low-income families, helping them move from poverty, move out of poverty. And so I ran a free income tax preparation program, financial literacy, financial coaching program, and also ran a children's savings account program. I joined ACC in 2016 to launch the Student Money Management Office. Austin Community College is comprised of 11 campuses. Our service area is larger than the size of most New England states. We have an enrollment of about 40,000 students, and each fall, about 5,000 to 6,000 of those students are first-time in college students. The Student Money Management Office was initially fully funded by a Department of Education Title III Strengthening Institutions Programs grant. As of now, we are in a 2-year transition from being fully funded by grants to being partially institutional funded. The office was established to address some of the financial planning and financial preparation issues that often resulted in a student showing up in the financial aid office in the middle of the semester needing more money. Now, before the Student Money Management Office was established, there was a lot of interest at ACC in financial literacy. Most often it fell to our financial aid staff, who conducted financial literacy workshops under that and other duties as assigned part of their job description. So they all were in agreement that financial literacy was really important and needed, and they were able to get leadership on board to see the vision that we actually needed at ACC to have a dedicated office that could sustain this programming throughout the year and it not just be an other duties as assigned job piece. Organizationally, our office resides in student affairs. We work alongside financial aid, but we are not a part of financial aid. And this is very intentionally designed. We serve all of our students, not just financial aid students. However, a huge part of our role ends up being connecting students to financial aid. We often catch students who would never step foot in one of our financial aid offices because of the many myths surrounding financial aid. So we're able to educate those students on what could be provided to them via the FAFSA and dispel any myths that they believe. And for students who are currently receiving financial aid or eligible for financial aid, we help them understand how to make those wise borrowing decisions and guide them on how to manage their loans or how to prepare for repayment. So I'm really interested to see, by a show of hands, how many of your institutions have a dedicated budget line for providing financial literacy or financial wellness programming? Oh man, there's only a couple of you. All right, well, so I predict 5 years from now, it's gonna be totally different. We're gonna get all of your institutions with a budget line for financial literacy. So we at Austin Community College, we have much of the same standard financial literacy programming as many offices like ours. So we offer workshops, we offer financial coaching, and provide online financial literacy available to all of our students. But today what I wanted to do is highlight some of the unique features of our programming that have really contributed to student retention. One of the best practices mentioned multiple times in the FLEC report is to provide information that is actionable, relevant, and timely so that our students are more likely to retain the information and act on it. We've used text messaging to help us deliver reminders to students about important financial aid requirements and deadlines, and also offer tips for managing their finances. We've had some really profound results, namely a 13 to 15% increase in fall-to-fall persistence among students who receive text messages. We've also seen an increase of 9% in scholarship applications to the Austin Community College Foundation. Now, there are many reasons why I love this text messaging platform, but when we started the Student Money Management Office in 2016, we're a staff of 4. Remember, we have 11 campuses and 40,000 students. So what we're always thinking about is how can we be everywhere at once? And we can't, but by leveraging technology, we're able to engage our students regardless of whether they live 20 minutes down the road from the campus where we're at, or they live an hour and a half away, which is not uncommon in our district. So the text messaging has really allowed us to build virtual relationships with students, and we are there where they are, even though we are not physically present. Last year, we delivered ongoing text messages to 12,500 students. We send those text messages from a robust text messaging software that looks just like an email inbox, and it allows us to personalize and target our text messages. So for example, we can send a payment reminder only to our students who are on a payment plan, or send a FAFSA nudge only to students who haven't completed this year's FAFSA. We first obtain permission from the student to send them ongoing text messages. So when I mentioned that we sent 12,500 students received text messages last year, that's how many were active in our program. Last year, we sent out close to 30,000 text messages. Well, we sent to 30,000 students, inviting them to participate in the text messaging program, and out of those 30,000, we ultimately had about 12,500 who said, yes, please continue to send me text messages. So we first obtain permission to text the student, and we do this via an introductory text message that asks them to confirm that they'd like to receive messages from us throughout the semester. Often our texts are interactive. So an example would be, "Hi Elizabeth, just checking in. Have you completed your 2020-2021 FAFSA?" We've sent this to Elizabeth because we know she hasn't completed her FAFSA. So we want to get her thinking about it. So we expect Elizabeth to text back a yes or no response. And we've programmed our system to respond accordingly. So we don't have to answer every incoming text. We only respond to the text messages that our system doesn't understand. So there we're leveraging artificial intelligence to help us reach as many students as possible. So we, the Student Money Management Office, we collaborate with our financial aid office on this text messaging program. So the day that the text message sends, staff from the Student Money Management Office respond to the easy texts. If a text requires a higher level of knowledge than what we can provide, we alert our financial aid staff, who then go into the system and respond directly to the student. Austin Community College has had a long-time emergency aid program. Last academic year, ACC distributed emergency aid grants to 293 students. About 2 years ago, we revamped our emergency aid program to be more accessible and available to students. The emergency aid program is managed by our financial aid office and our support center. Our support center is a program at ACC that offers case management services for students with a 0 EFC. As part of this revamp, the Student Money Management Office was involved deeply in discussions. And at first, it really made sense to the team working on the revamp that any emergency aid recipient be mandated to have a financial counseling appointment with somebody from the Student Money Management Office. But when we really started digging in to the students' presenting situations, we quickly discovered that just because a student requests emergency aid for a financial emergency, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are poor at managing their money. More often than not, they simply just do not have enough money to meet basic needs, and any kind of financial hiccup quickly escalates into a financial crisis for them. So we agreed to make it an option for students, but not a condition of receiving emergency aid. And just to note, even to receive emergency aid, a student does have to submit a written budget, which is most often reviewed by a student by a staff member, or with the student by a staff member. And if the student needs additional guidance on budgeting, they're referred to us in the Student Money Management Office for more extensive budget counseling. But again, it's not a mandated requirement. But we continue to ponder in the Student Money Management Office, what is the role of the Student Money Management Office in our emergency aid program? And where does financial literacy fit in? So where we landed is that the Student Money Management Office's role is to prepare our students for emergencies. And so we do this through our financial literacy curriculum, which we deliver to about 3,000 students annually. In the curriculum, we advise students to have at least $500 set aside for an emergency. And when I'm talking about our curriculum, we deliver our financial literacy workshops in our student success courses. So our student success course is a required course of any student who has fewer than 12 college credit hours. So the Student Money Management Office, we reach out to all of the professors of those courses and say, hey, let us take over one of your class sections and we'll deliver our financial literacy workshop. It's not required of any of the professors. It's just an invitation. And each semester, we're in about, this fall semester, we've been in 113 sections of our student success course. And so that's where we're delivering our financial literacy curriculum to our students. And so to bring it back to financial emergencies, what we're talking to students about is the importance of saving for an emergency. And we recommend that they have at least $500 set aside for that financial emergency. Now that $500, where we landed on that amount, is we looked at the average requests or average money distributed to students who were requesting emergency aid, and the average amount distributed to students for their emergency was about $500. Now, think about the last time somebody told you to save. So perhaps it was a piece of advice to start saving or save more for retirement. And no doubt you agreed with that advice, right? We all should be saving, we all should be saving more. But did you do something about it? So some of you may have, but most of you probably said, oh yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll save more for retirement tomorrow. It's just kind of human nature, right? Another recommendation in the FLEC report that I'd like to highlight is that we need to make it easy for students to make good decisions and follow through, and we need to remove hassles and barriers. So we're putting that recommendation into practice. So we go into the classroom and we teach our students how to save for emergencies. And then we give them an incentive and a way to do that so that they can do it today. So last year, we launched a partnership with a local credit union that we call the Rainy Day Savings Program. So we open a savings account for the student on campus. So Student Money Management Office staff can actually open a bank account for a student. So students sitting right across from us, we can fill out the bank paperwork right there. They don't have to go to the branch, so we're removing that barrier. We deliver the paperwork to the credit union, and the credit union funds the $5 opening deposit for that savings account so that we don't have to worry about getting cash from the student, lost checks, and then the student has no excuses to not open up this account because we're going to give them, the credit union's going to give them $5 to get this account open and established. So once the account is open, students can earn up to $100 in cash incentives for doing things like completing the FAFSA, setting up direct deposit, meeting with a financial coach, and completing a scholarship application. So last year in our first cohort of students, we had 95 students, and they collectively had a balance of $43,016 on the last day of the program. And that includes $4,850 that we gave out in incentives, but it doesn't include the withdrawals that were made along the way by students to pay the rent when a roommate skipped town for a root canal or for a trip to the vet. So this account is set up for the student to save for an emergency. They get to define the emergency, and they may withdraw the funds at any time that they need to. I've had lots of great student stories. One that comes to mind is Lisa, who is a single mom, and I remember opening her savings account because we were kind of playing phone tag, and she was calling to inquire about the program, and I ended up catching her at her daughter's softball game one evening on the phone. So Lisa, she works full-time at a local agency serving survivors of domestic violence, and she was one of the very first students who opened a rainy day savings account, and that's why she really kind of sticks out in my mind. Periodically, we have students write blog posts for our office, and I asked Lisa to write a short blog post for us, encouraging other students to open one of our rainy day savings accounts, and this is what she wrote. I started the savings program initially just to get the extra cash. The program requires that you complete a direct deposit to get one of the $25 incentives, so I did. I figured $30 a pay period was an amount I wouldn't notice. Before I knew it, I had saved over $700 and received all of the incentives for the program, $100 in total. Unfortunately, I ended up having a dental emergency that I could not financially cover. I was able to use the money I saved through the Rainy Day Savings Program to get much needed dental work done. The Student Money Management Office's Rainy Day Savings Program helped me when I was in a crunch for extra cash. I've started to save again and will continue to utilize this account for any rainy day that may come. So if you're interested in looking to incorporate the importance of emergency savings into your curriculum or into some materials that you provide to students in your office. I advise looking at America Saves for resources. And then the other resource that I have been in contact with recently that's really intriguing is Saver Life. So I really encourage you to write Saver Life down and check them out. Saver Life is an organization based in California, and they have got a nationwide savings incentives program that they just launched that anybody can join, and they provide incentives for people as they're saving for particular goals. So Saver Life is something I recommend that you look into. Another recommendation embedded in the FLEC report is that institutions consider using well-trained peer educators to deliver financial education to fellow students. And I love this idea of including a peer component to a financial wellness program for 3 reasons. So first, it helps you increase your capacity to reach students. We use peers in our programming because again, we've got 11 campuses, 40,000 students, and we want to be everywhere at once. So we need physical bodies to help us attend all the outreach events that we're invited to. And so our peers just simply help us reach more students. Another reason why I really love the peer component is that we know that the peer-to-peer influence is powerful. Through focus groups and interviews, students have told us that they first turn to family for money advice, and then second to friends. The other reason I really like the peer component is it really helps us keep students at the center of what we do. Although not a formal part of their role, our peers really help inform and shape our programming. So when we have a new program or a tool, they're the ones who test it out for us and provide us feedback. So like the resource I just told you about, Saver Life, I just came across them a couple of months ago. I've got a group of our peer mentors who are testing that out for us in kind of this, safe environment. So far they love it. And once they kind of fully vet the program or that tool, then we'll launch to the larger ACC community. So we implemented our peer program shortly after we launched our office. Each fall and spring semester, we select 12 students as our peers. To be eligible to apply to be a peer money mentor, students must have a minimum 2.5 grade point average and an 80% or higher completion rate and at least 12 college credit hours. Our applications are a really simple Google form that asks the students to explain why they want to be part of the Peer Money Mentor program, and it requests that they provide us 2 Austin Community College faculty or staff members who can be contacted to provide a recommendation. There is not a requirement that they be from any particular major. Our relatively simple application and selection process has worked really well for us, and each one of our cohorts has been really diverse in regards to academic majors, race, and life experiences. In the spring semester, our cohort represented 8 majors, including accounting, architecture, business, finance, computer science, economics, education, general studies, and biology. When we're selecting our peers, we're really just looking for students who are really excited to learn about financial literacy, and they're excited about sharing with other students, and that they're not afraid of engaging in conversations with strangers. Unlike peer programs at 4-year institutions, our peers do not conduct one-on-one coaching or counseling sessions for students. Rather, they primarily help us with outreach events. We get lots of requests to participate in campus events and activities. Our peers are trained to inform students about our programming, and then they're trained to conduct some interactive educational activities as part of the programming outreach. Our peers also create and conduct mini workshops that they deliver in a classroom of their choosing. So this helps our office gain more exposure, as our full-time staff only conduct workshops for that student success course I talked about earlier. And that's really just due to capacity. So that means the psychology department or the radio, television, and film department may only know us now because one of our peers conducted a mini workshop in one of their classes. Each semester, our peers work on group projects that support the mission of our office. So this semester, they hosted a Jeopardy game at our most central campus with questions all related to money and financial aid. In the spring, the peers helped job fair attendees at our annual job fair access and pull their credit reports through annualcreditreport.com and provided basic credit education. We also enlist our peers in writing blog posts. And this semester, we started a podcast with the help of our peers. But the podcast, in all honesty, is a bit rough, and we've learned a lot. In the first episode of the first couple of episodes, our peers really got into it, but we're spouting off stats that just weren't correct, although they sounded really good. So we're kind of getting the hang of how to guide students in creating engaging but accurate podcasts, and we look forward to refining that project. A couple of semesters ago, the peers also engaged in conversations with our library staff, to discover ways that the Student Money Management Office and the libraries could partner more in helping our students with financial literacy. And so what the peers did is they interviewed all the library staff, got their feedback, and then put together some recommendations for what we could do. And ultimately, with the library staff, they created a library guide that's now accessible for all ACC students on the library homepage, or not on their homepage, but on the library webpage. And it compiles all of the resources through the ACC libraries that students have access to in regards to financial literacy. This semester, we have 11 peer money mentors who are each paid a $600 stipend for their participation. They spend approximately 40 hours per semester on activities related to being a peer money mentor. Our 3-year plan is to convert some of the existing peer positions into work-study positions. This requires that we redesign aspects of the current program to accommodate work-study students who may have significantly more hours per semester to be in the role of a peer money mentor. This semester, we have one peer mentor who is a work-study student. So she's not getting the $600 stipend, but she's being paid as a work-study student. And she's been participating as all of the other peer money mentors have, and then in addition, helping us develop the program for the future when we integrate more work-study positions. Right, finding the money. So clearly the initiatives of our office take staff and money. And you may be asking, where do you find the money to support programs such as the ones that I've mentioned? And I'd love to stand here and tell you that I found the money tree, and that y'all have access to the money tree. But some suggestions I have for you. So our office was established by the Department of Ed, Title III, Strengthening Institutions Program Grant. And it was a multi-year grant, and we really wasted no time in testing, or very early on, testing various strategies, learning from our failures, improving quickly, and adjusting our path forward. You know, one thing I feel really lucky that I had as a resource was because TACFEP had been around for 3 years by that point, I immediately had a group of colleagues who I could talk to and ask them to tell me all of their mistakes so that I didn't have to make them too, and then also ask them to share with me what their successes were. And that really helped accelerate our getting our programming going. So we used our early successes to start expanding our funding opportunities because it was a multi-year grant, but we knew it had an end date. Now, before coming to Austin Community College, I spent many years in the nonprofit world, and for much of that time, I was responsible for raising a large portion of the $2 million it took to run my department's budget for the year, and it was all grant funded. And so putting my grant writer's hat on, I can tell you that right now, student debt, student financial wellness, and food insecurity on campuses, these are all hot topics that you should be asking for money to address these issues. So these are ripe for funders right now. So where I suggest you look to are your current donors and funders, so such as those who are already contributing to scholarships, or if you have an emergency aid program, and asking them to deepen their commitment and help fund some financial wellness programming on your campus. Local financial institutions are also a great place to approach for funding some of these initiatives. The first funding we received for our rainy day savings program was from our local credit union, who supported student scholarships and our emergency aid program for years. And so this funder was looking for more meaningful ways to contribute, and they increased their annual gift to us through seed money to test our savings program idea. Now, there are some great opportunities right now to assemble data for your ask, because funders always want to see the data. I mean, as our leaders of our institutions do as well, but funders, they want to see, like, where is the need? Show me what the need is. There are two fairly well-known student surveys circulating looking at student financial health. Trellis Company is one such entity. So they conducted a survey of student financial wellness for us in 2018, and we used the data we obtained from that survey in our funding requests. The Hope Center for College Community and Justice at Temple University has also recruited institutions to participate in their Real College survey. So neither are recruiting schools at this time. However, I believe they both will be looking for schools to participate for next fall. So those are great opportunities that are free for you to get data on your student financial wellness on your campus. If you don't have access to this kind of research, then I suggest looking internally for data that documents the financial issues your students are facing. So perhaps you track visits to your food pantry or emergency aid grants distributed, or perhaps you could distribute a survey at your institution to gather data to support your request. And before I wrap up, the final resource that I just wanted to pique your attention, so besides connecting with TACFEP when I first started the Student Money Management Office, the other group that I connected with was the Higher Education Financial Wellness Alliance, which is a national group that brings together a lot of institutions who are working on financial wellness on campus. And so that's a great group to get connected to if you're either thinking about implementing some programming or you've got some specific questions. I found both TACFEP and HEFWA, as it's called, to be very welcoming communities, and they just share resources, right? So nobody has to create anything. You just ask, and it just will be shared with you. So thank you.
Thanks. So thanks so much, Karen, Nick, Erin. I think a lot of great resources are not just exclusive to the state of Texas. Hopefully you've gotten some ideas. Hopefully you've all kind of got a sense of maybe motivation about doing more or doing something differently, thinking about maybe perhaps some collaborative opportunities and the value of that, exploring the peer-to-peer model, consider text messaging, consider reaching out to a financial institution, taking another look at your aid offer letter, and especially I hope that you will take the brochure that's in the back of the room and consider visiting in the Resource Center the Financial Literacy and Education Commission representatives. You can get a copy of the report, and you can also talk to them because they want to hear from you about some of your ideas and some of your problems and how to, support your efforts at your school. So we are more than happy to have an email from anyone with a question, link you up. I met earlier with somebody that had a particular need, and I know someone at another school that could help her. So we will stand in the back outside because we have to get ready for the next session by the window, and happy to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you so much for attending this session on financial literacy matters. Have a good afternoon.